This time of the year, one of the few sounds you're going to hear echoing through these woods is the sound of taps being hammered into trees.
Hear the difference in that sound? That way you know, don't go any farther or you'll never get your tap out at the end of the season.
If you look up Terre Haute, Indiana, you will find it is famous for a few things. The first being the birthplace of the contoured Coca-Cola bottle, another being the home of the Clapper Girl baking powder, and last, the attendance of the famous Larry Bird at Indiana State University. Even though it has some well-known achievements, there's a lesser-known part of its history, started by one man, that has been a tradition for over 50 years. Located at Prarie Creek Park, locals might just find this park a little bit sweeter than the rest.
My name is Keith Rubel, and I started work here about 1969. Came in as a naturalist and then assistant superintendent, and I became superintendent in 73, and I was here over 40 years as superintendent. And I started the maple camp here. This park is blessed with maple trees. In 1972, I told the park board that we had a natural resource down at Prarie Creek Park that had never been tapped. They didn't know what I was talking about.
So my name is Heather Cosme Million. I'm the Natural Resource Programmer, and actually I handle all of the educational content, programs, and events for the entire department. And it's really cool getting to be able to see this maple syrup operation because it's something that they don't have all around the U.S. So this will be my second year. Last year, unfortunately, it got too warm too quickly. So we came out and we tapped the trees, and we really hoped that we would have a good year, and then we didn't. It just went from below freezing every day up to 50-degree weather too quickly. This year is our first year that we've been doing it, that I've been involved, that we actually are getting syrup, and I'm really excited about that.
I've been involved in it for, this will be my 11th year.
I started 1 year before Jeff, so we've been doing it for a little over a decade.
Right now we're doing 295 taps. When we first started, we had anywhere from, 1,500 to 1,800 taps. So there was a lot. 3 pump houses, 2 push pole pumps, and I don't know how many buckets they ran, probably 60 buckets at that time on top of all that. So it was a job.
An average 1,000 gallons of sap a night, 1,200.
Oh, at least.
You know.
Yeah, there was nights we would bring in 1,500 gallons of sap. We would fill this tank and we would be sitting here with 600 gallons of sap on the back of the dump truck waiting for this to boil to where we could dump that in, and we'd still have 2 1,500 gallon tanks waiting to empty. When you're looking for a spot on your tree, you got to look for where the old taps were. These little knobs here, that's where it's healed itself, and those are old tap holes. So you have to stay at least 2 inches on each side of that, and probably anywhere from a foot to 18 inches from top to bottom, because that'll be dead wood. So we try to find a spot in between, off to the side, above or below that, where we can get a good tap so the sap will flow good. And you can see when we find a good spot, if we're gonna go right here, it should be white wood when we tap. See the white wood come out? And that's what you want to see. If it's brown, you're in dead wood. And then we always spray to disinfect it. And then he'll clean it out and put the tap in. It's long enough, wasn't it? Yeah. The ideal temperature is about, you want it to get down to like 27 degrees at night. That 27 to about 44, 45 degree temperature, man, that is perfect conditions for the sap to flow.
We used to be able to tap 1st of February and go into almost the beginning of March. 4 weeks in.
But we've tapped in January and ran all the way to March before.
Yeah. And now we're lucky to get 2 or 3 weeks in before it warms up and it pretty much shuts down.
It's hard because you got to try to watch your calendar for those dates that temperature's going to be there. If you tap too soon, then you're taking a chance of your taps going dry on you, and then you don't want to go through and re-tap again. If you wait too long, temperature can go to 60 degrees, boom. If it ever hits 60 degrees, it's over.
Yeah.
The trees, once the tree starts budding, it's done.
So I told them what we had, and I got approval to buy an evaporator. And when I got that, we decided that we needed to have a building to put it in. So I got this building up in Vermilion County from the people here. This cabin's kind of interesting because it was back in the 1800s when it was moved. It was moved up to, on Bruce Creek up on a hillside, and the family intended to go on west, but the woman who had all her fancy dishes and everything in the covered wagon, the chalk on the back of the wagon that held the wagon from rolling down here broke loose, and it went down and busted everything they had. So they just decided to settle there. This cabin was given by the Farrington family, but I got a fellow by the name of Don Foltz, who used to be the director of the Department of Natural Resources, and he's a friend of mine, and he knew about the cabin, so he made arrangements, and we got the cabin, and we brought it down here to make a sugar house out of it.
All the lines are set up to where they come, they're all running downhill, so gravity's gonna pull it towards the pump house anyway. But with the vacuum, it's actually pulling it from the tree, not waiting until it to get here. So it'll pull it in, it sends vacuum to the releaser, which the releaser sucks it in. And once it gets so full, that'll dump into our barrel. The float in our barrel activates the pump, and that'll pump it right up to the cabin. So now that we've got everything narrowed down right here, it's pretty simple now. We don't have it, we don't have 3 pump houses running. It's pretty nice. And we can see about everything coming in. So it's not too bad. It's pretty simple. Right now we're running good vacuum. We got about 27 pounds of vacuum. 29 is almost perfect. So you get any more than that, you're doing pretty good. So we're pretty happy right now. If the sap would flow a little better, it'd be all right.
I'm Adam Grossman, and superintendent for the Vigo County Parks. It used to be an all hands on deck operation when I first got here. We had what we used to call the sap master. It was Jimmy Pierce, the guy here that taught me everything he knew about the syrup operation. Not a lot of money to be made in maple syrup, or lose money. So we made the decision there about 4 or 5 years ago. We'll scale it back a little bit, still be able to show people our vacuum system, buckets, the evaporator, and how to make maple syrup, but reduce the staff time spent on the product. So now we're down this year to about 300 taps, and that's been pretty good for us. We can still show people the system, we can still show people how it's made, but Vigo County Parks is here more for the educational value than just try to sell every drop of syrup that we can. We'd sold a little bit, all at a market down the road in different places, but now, especially nowadays with the state rules the way they are, we're going to stay into driveway sales. So we'll sell it here at the park, but we're not going to sell it anywhere else.
We would make so much syrup you would never sell all of it, because we can't really advertise like you would at a grocery store or something, and then all your laws change at that point. Now the laws have changed to where we can only sell it if they come to us. It's kind of a out the door sell. It's not like, I don't know what you call it, like we can't sell it to a vendor and then them resell it without going through a license and all. It's getting really bad. As a matter of fact, a lot of your maple syrup producers are dwindling down because they can't afford to, what they want them to do. Yeah, we know one guy that we actually buy stuff from sometimes, and he helps us out with questions and so on and so forth. He's been doing it for years and years and years. He had 8,000 taps at one time, and this year he's going down to 2,000 taps. Now they're starting to inspect him and stuff to where they're trying to treat it like restaurants. Well, you can't. It's outdoors. It's not the same, and they don't understand that, It's not the same thing.
We tapped trees in around 1972, and back in those days we had a guy up here named Junior Hunt. He had a team of percher and horses. We had a tank that was hold 300 gallons of sap. and he would go through the woods, and he'd get up on top, and we'd take the buckets and empty them into a 5-gallon bucket, and hand them up to him. He'd dump in that tank, and we go from straight through the woods there. And it was interesting because we got back in the back where it was kind of hilly. He'd get them horses down to the bottom of the hill and just rest them a minute. And all of a sudden he'd get up, and them suckers would pull that 300 gallons of sap up that hill. 8 pounds, a little more 8 pounds a gallon. So they pulled a lot of weight, plus the weight of that wagon.
When we start collecting sap, we've got a whole bunch of tubing through the park. We've got 1-inch main lines and then 5/16 ladder lines that go out to our 300 trees we've got tapped. We have our vacuum pump down here in our pump house. Well, that's right down here below. The half barrel down there fills up with sap. It'll pump about 15 gallons at a time from the pump house up this line and into our milk tank. So when it comes up here into our milk tank, we got 2 different lines. If we collect buckets and have a tank on the Kubota, we'll hook up this line. The other line's the one that pump pumps directly into. So we got tape on our piping here that shows how many gallons are in the milk tank. This is 250 and this is 500. So like today, we had about 520 gallons of sap. Then when we're ready for it inside, we'll open up that valve and that sap will flow into our tank inside. So if we want to head in here, we'll go on in this direction. We really centered all the operation so that people can see it. We can stand here like we are today and show them the entire operation from this vantage. Years ago when we used to run up against the other county road, people really couldn't see that. They didn't walk out there much. It's tough to explain. So having all this operation here is really valuable for education. So we got the sap in the milk tank. Then we'll bring it in here into this holding tank. That tank up there has a float in it that when it calls for more sap, we've got a pump down here that'll pump that sap up to that upper tank, so then we can gravity feed into the steam away unit. The unit down here off to the side we don't use as much anymore is our RO machine. We just don't collect enough sap to really use that efficiently. We need 400 gallons a day to start the evaporator. If we were collecting 1,000 gallons, we'd use that RO. It'll cut your boil time significantly. But for today, we only had 500 gallons. We want to boil and just push a few gallons out. And we're doing it more for show. Boiling for 8 hours doesn't really bother us too much right now, as we want people to be able to come through and see the operation. So as the steam away unit calls for more sap, it'll come out of that tank up here, and we'll come on in here to where we're finishing the product. I'll stand right here so maybe you can hear me, but the back portion is called our steam away unit, and all it does is preheat the sap before it goes into our evaporator. You don't want ice cold sap hitting what you're trying to finish in the front pan and knocking your temperature down all the time. So the front pan there, where all the steam's coming off of, is our evaporator unit, and it's baffled so that you can push that sugar to one side. We'll draw off of this side today, and we'll have syrup on this side and not quite syrup on the other side. Every time we boil, we'll switch those so that you don't get a buildup of that sugar, sand, and stuff on one side. So every time we boil each day, we'll switch sides. Not been a problem in recent years, so we've only boiled a handful of times a year. When we walk in here, you'll see a gauge up on the wall. That gets us close. We look at the barometric pressure, look at the boiling point of water, look at the boiling point to get the syrup, and then we'll set that gauge to tell us when it thinks it's syrup. But you never trust a gauge, and you never trust electronics. We'll set right here on this draw off, and we'll have a hydrometer, and that hydrometer will tell you if it's syrup every time right on. You don't want it below, you don't want it above. When you get that finished product of syrup, you want it right dead center of that line before it goes in to be bottled. So you can make it a little heavy, you can dilute it down, but you just can't send it into the kitchen under finished. So trust your hydrometer, don't trust your electronics. So we can go on into the finish room. This is our newer oil-fired. We used to run wood. We'd open that every 10 minutes, and reload with a bundle of wood like that every 10 minutes to keep heat underneath that. Well, every time you open the door, shut off the fan, you lose heat. So that is a much quicker, more efficient, even heat than the wood, and a lot safer for us. Oh, you're gonna be on camera. Right now it's our break room. So bring the syrup in here. We put something in it called diatomaceous earth. That helps bind and take out some of the impurities, that sugar, sand, different things. We'll put it in this pot here. It's gonna be hot. It's gonna come off that evaporator, and we'll run it through our filter press. We run it through all those filters to get all of that stuff out of there so you've got pure maple syrup. It goes into this container here, which has got a LP flame underneath of it, and make sure that that temperature is up. Make sure there's no bacteria in it. You want it at that temperature before you bottle. We've got this bottling apparatus here that was homemade that we got. That gives you an even fill every time without wasting syrup. Then you want to put that cap on, lay it on its side on the cooling rack. That hot syrup against that cap will make sure that you don't have that bacteria buildup in there. So as it cools, it'll lay on its side, then we'll set it back up. When it's completely cooled off, we bring it into our storage room in here. This used to be, the shelves used to be just lined with syrup. Now we don't have a drop, but 10 years ago or so, we had 500 gallons stuffed in here, and we couldn't begin to sell it all. We wound up selling it for a lower price to another vendor just to clear it out of here. But we've got an air conditioner hooked up in the back, so in the summertime, as it starts to warm up, we want to keep that syrup cool and in a dark location, which is right here. If you put the syrup in a freezer, it'll be fine. Thaw it out, pop it in the microwave, you've got the syrup you put in there the day you put it in. If you're going to use it fairly soon, you can put it in the refrigerator. It lasts a long time in the refrigerator. So syrup, once it's finished, it is pretty versatile.
And I went to a place where it's just introducing maple tubing. And they had it many years ago. It was metal, but they were going into plastic material. And I went to a place where they started it to learn a little bit about it. And I got interested in maple so much that I started going to the national and international maple meeting. I've been all over the East Coast and up in Canada to learn all new types of products and new different types of technology in maple, and it's still changing all the time. So we got her started here, and for a number of years, we took children through here on maple tours, and thousands of children, year after year after year. One time we're up to about 1,800 taps. And most we ever made was about between 400 and 500 gallons of syrup. That was when we didn't have vacuum pumps. Now, if they had the vacuum pumps they had here now, they could make a lot more, and they're only tapping a fraction of what's here. Basically just doing a little bit to demonstrate this, because the evaporator in there is almost oversized for what they've got. And they got a reverse osmosis machine back in the back that they quit using because it took sap that was 43 gallons to 1 and got it down to like 12 to 1. After it went through, it took all the water out of the sap, so you didn't boil all that water away. And that's what people out east do. Up north, they run through an RO machine, and that way they don't have to boil all that water. Great savings in time, labor, fuel to evaporate it down to syrup. Anyway, that's basically the story of down here.
Our goal, we'd like to make about 40 gallons. We average about 34 gallons since we've made a lot of these cuts. That gives us enough for our pancake breakfast and then some syrup to sell. So we hope to continue to punch out that 30, 40 gallon, have some decent years. We'll maybe make 60, 70 gallon. And we'll put some more trees online once we get this lined out. That won't be too much additional effort, and add probably another 50 trees or so here in the next year or two, just to help. Right now we're kind of borderline on a meager run. We may only collect 200, 250 gallon. We'd really like for that to be 400 on a meager run. So that'll kind of be our target. It'll be a moving target a little bit, but there's years when we were tapping all those trees, you didn't hardly make anything or nothing. You're at the mercy of Mother Nature. If you have a quick warm up in 2 weeks of really warm weather, you're not going to make anything anyway. So it doesn't matter how many taps you have.
I read so many books and read so much, and I came out here every single day last year, and even this year I came out and tapped trees with them and everything because I was so excited for it, because where else are you going to get to say, oh yeah, I go to work and I get to make maple syrup? And then it didn't happen, so I was so upset, and I've learned a lot from them, and it's been such a cool process getting to learn it, and now it's something that I get to pass on to other people. So we have a few groups that are coming out to do field trips here over the next few weeks. We've got some elementary schools, some homeschool groups and things like that. And then about mid-February here, I actually am going to be leading a hike for families to come out here in the woods, and we'll walk through the maple grove here behind me and look at the trees, and I'll teach them how we tap them, how we collect our sap, and the whole process. And then hopefully, if we still are boiling then, we'll get to go inside the cabin and we'll teach them all about that too. I think that's a really important piece for our kids, is to be able to teach them about the natural resources that we have here in Indiana, and just kind of teach them about where they're from. Probably
the favorite memory was talking to children. You know, they had no idea. It's like, you know, they open the faucet and get water. They have no idea where water comes from, or to get a gallon milk jug and they don't know where milk, you know, teaching them where sweetener comes from, you know, and things. And that was a real interesting, because a lot of kids, when they came here, they never tasted maple syrup in their life. And it was interesting to just look at their faces when we had to always give them all those sample. And the teachers enjoyed it. It was nice to get out of school to get out in nature. And we explained to them how Indians made it and how early settlers made it and how they taught the settlers and stuff, and historical, you know, viewpoint of it and stuff. So, but Indiana was supposedly the largest maple producer back in 18 something in the United States at one time.
I'll just see the kids go along and look in the buckets and see the sap dripping out, and people just don't realize, you know, what it is or how the operation works. And, you know, to give tours to the kids, and, you know, they'll stand in front of our vacuum pump and they'll scare them to death when it releases. And, you know, just teaching the kids about the natural resource that we have, and seeing them watch the sap drip in buckets and starting to understand, oh, well, that's where syrup really comes from, not this corn syrup you buy from Walmart. So it's nice to see the kids and see them learn about it.
With what our setup is, we have automatic draw-offs. We got a temperature probe down in our pan. So I keep a good eye on that. And normally when you get up to about 218 degrees, 216, I'll start checking, and I'll have a cup with a hydrometer in it. That hydrometer is 59%, it's got a red line, 59% sugar. When I get it to that level, that's when we take it in to bottle it. It'll be sugared. It's sugared. I just want it to be a little bit more than that.
Yeah. So it's been dark all season then?
Yeah. Rubel, he's ran nothing but dark syrup too. Okay. So you know, we didn't get no golden this year, but usually it won't get any lighter. If we can get this flushed out, and then we got good sap coming in behind it, and we might be able to hold our grade. That's what we're hoping. He's our vacuum guy, and I'm the cook. I got the easy part, you know. I stay in a warm cabin and fire the boiler up and start getting sap boiling again, so he's got the rough one. It's almost right on. It's almost right at sugar there. Not going to be a very big batch, it don't look like. I'm over sugared. I can go ahead and dilute it and get it in there, and we'll wait for another draw. Might be better off.
Yeah, they won't burn that way.
All right. Around here, the sap that comes in is about 2% sugar right out of the tree. So it takes us, on a good year, the sugar content's up there pretty well. It's usually about 40 to 50 gallons of sap to make a gallon.
Maple syrup is probably one of the best sweeteners, health-wise. Of course, you can overdo it. You know, too much sugar is bad for you. But if you look at all the information about, maple sugar, honey, all kinds of other, regular sugar and stuff. It's got more nutrients in it than other sugar products. If I had a cotton candy machine here, I could make maple cotton candy, and you wouldn't believe how delicious that is. You have to add a little bit of cane sugar to it, but it's mostly maple. It's unbelievable. And maple cream the same way. Take maple cream and you boil at a certain point, and you whip it, and it looks like butter. And you pour it. It's delicious.
I always lose a gallon going through the press because it'll hold it in those filters. That is what it is. So I'll probably end up bottling around 7. Every time I run this through when it's ready, I always run a test bottle through. And that way, if there's anything that was left in that tube from before, I get it out and we can dump it back in a pan and recook it. So that way nobody gets old syrup. They all think it's easy until they do it. And then when they start doing it, it's like, this is never going to turn to syrup. I tell you, the worst thing that most people that haven't done it, that try to do it on their own, they don't understand. Every time you add fresh sap to it, it just kills your syrup that you already had in there. And that's why I try to tell, I know it sounds like more work, but if you go with the 3-pan method over the fire, it's so much better because that second pan that goes into the hot pan is already warm when it goes in, and part of your water is gone. And then you got your cold pan, medium pan, and your hot pan. It's a bigger area, but it takes way less time. Other thing people don't understand is it's not like the syrup that you buy out of the grocery store, because that's corn syrup. That's why it's so thick. Regular maple syrup's it's not that thick. I mean, if you cook it that thick, now you got molasses. You've cooked it way a little too long. But we can make candy, and
we made candy,
cream and all that, and then you cook it longer. But then there's other things you do to it to get it there. Yeah, it's darker than the dark. We're very dark. How's that for a sample?
What?
See, you can have a sample taste.
Oh, thank
you. Nope, it's smooth. It's actually really good. That's actually pretty smooth for very dark.
Well, in October, we usually start running the woods. You'll have we got trees down everywhere. You'll have to cut up trees. Then we'll start running the lines in around November. But there's just all kinds of stuff to do. I mean, most of the time, your main lines down there, you'll have a tree on those. They'll be on the ground. You got to cut the tree off. You got to re-gripple and rewire your line back up. There'll be squirrel chews, deer chews, you name it. It usually takes us about a month to get everything cleared up and all the lines ran. Then you'll have spiles that need to be replaced from the year before. When you pull them out of the trees are kind of growing over a little bit, so the spiles don't come out easy. A lot of them break. So there's a lot of work involved just getting ready to be able to tap.
I think people really need to realize how much work there is behind that gallon of syrup. Just a ton of hours put in, ton of effort. For people that make syrup around here, it's more of a labor of love. Unless you're going to sell candy and cream and pumps and really diversify your operation, you're not going to make money on maple syrup. You're doing it because it's a family deal and you just want to do it for fun. You want to have your own homemade product. For us, we want people to learn what that natural resource is and what you can do with it and how. And that's the main thing for us. When we're cooking, we want people to come out here and watch and give tours and explain the process so that people can really understand, what it is.
They've actually, over the years, have strategically planted the trees. So when some of the older trees would die out, the newer trees would just take their place.
If you drive around the park, all these trees here in a row, those all been planted. As far as I know, it sounded to me like they took them out of these woods here and transplanted them along through the park.
Yeah.
So it was pretty much set up for maple syrup.
A tree, if it's in a woods, and if it's close to other trees, it's not going to produce much sap because it's crowded in there. A maple tree that's best is the ones that got big crowns, something like you'd see growing in someone's yard. If it's in the woods around another tree, it has a little narrow top and only produce maybe 1% sap, which is 76 to 1. And if you get it, most trees are about 2%, 43 to 1. And but if you can thin them out, you can get it 3 to 4% sugar, which is a lot more saving. So the whole idea is to go in the woods and thin it out so only the best trees are growing, so that their crowns can expand to where the more leaf areas they can produce, and thus more sugar. Being in the park, you normally don't kill trees. I did here in the park. I thinned a number of trees here because trees were so thick. A lot of trees were undesirable, and if you're going to have a sugar camp, you got to do it in such a way that you can promote the maple trees so they are going to be good sap producers in the future. So this whole hollow right here, I did in the back where they were small, and I thinned them. Now they're like this because I thinned them out. But now the mature trees like that, you can't help them because they're already mature. But the ones is, anywhere from 2 to 4 inches, you can thin those out, and they'll really make use of that more sunlight.
And I still call Keith all the time, talk to him 3 or 4 days a week at least while we're running, and see what he's doing and what they used to do and what he thinks, and we'll bounce back and forth between Keith and another sugar bush operation in Greencastle, and we'll all talk amongst ourselves about what's going on. Is it the year? Is it us? Is it what we're doing? Kind of gauge what we're doing against other people. So there's a lot of conversation, a lot of variables, and there's always different years with different problems. Sometimes it's equipment problems, sometimes it's tree problems. So you just never know what you're going to get.
I think what I look forward to most is getting, to see the process from start to finish. I'm really excited to actually be able to see that this year, but mainly getting to pass it on to the next generation and to our kids. This is kind of a dying art, and not many people do it anymore. Not many people reenact in our pioneer village or anything like that. So I'm really glad that I get to do my part in educating our youth and teaching them about Indiana and about our resources.
That's about all I can tell you.
Well, I really appreciate it.
Since I enjoy the syrup making process myself, I went into this project just expecting to capture what a larger operation looks like and showcase the unique location where it all happens. But it turned into something more, witnessing the deep passion for passing on an art like this to the next generation. Seeing the dedication and pride in keeping this tradition alive resonated with me in a way I didn't expect. I myself share the same passion, and I look forward to passing down my own knowledge, including my newfound enjoyment of tapping trees and making maple syrup, to my daughter. Traditions like this are more than just a skill. They're a way of connecting with nature, history, and each other. As long as we continue to share them, they will never be lost.